This island we live on is home to a remarkable number of myths and legends concerning paranormal creatures, or cryptids. Some were reported quite recently, while others are from folk tales that predate recorded history. And Britain has been associated with an eerie deceptiveness ever since the ancient Greeks and Romans first noticed us and wrote of our Celtic ancestors and what was said to live amongst them. The ancient Greek and Roman writers such as Julius Caesar, Strabo and Tacitus provided descriptions of the Celts and their practices. The Celtic people's religious practices and beliefs were oral in nature and not recorded in written form by the Celts themselves. In Celtic mythology, the other world is a realm of the deities and possibly also the dead. This was the realm of the fairy folk and other supernatural beings. Besides the gods, animals were also important to the Celts and were perhaps themselves recorded as sacred, and Celtic gods often appeared in animal forms. Because of this, Celts were often cautious and respectful towards animals. The beautiful and dramatic landscape of the Peak District didn't escape this view, as it has an abundance of these myths and legends, and the area is blessed with a profusion of ancient and mysterious sites. Stone circles and standing stones were considered the haunt of fairies, and burial mounds were the entrances to the other world and the fairy kingdom. The ancient people were very superstitious, and they used to believe that flint arrowheads found in the peaks were made by the elves to harm humans and livestock. So to protect themselves, people would wear these as amulets or hang them over the barn front doors and cattle sheds. Many of these ancient observers saw spectral figures and phantom black dogs patrolling the moors, and mermaids hiding in pools waiting to drag an unsuspecting traveller into the depths. So many of these sightings are what we call today cryptids. There are several legends in the Peak District which are associated with a creature known as a hob, and their cousins, the Bogarts. And they seem to be connected with what is possibly one of the oldest man-made monuments in the Peak District, the ancient Henge of Arbor, a circle of recumbent stones dating to the Neolithic. Now, given to the importance of this site, there are not many legends connected to it, apart from the fact the place is said to be crawling with Bogarts. So, what is a Bogart? These are particularly troublesome and potentially dangerous spirits that delight in tormenting humans. They generally hide themselves by day and only come out at night, and described as being about 3 foot tall with shaggy hair, ragged clothes and nasty tempers, depending who you ask. Now, another well-known Bogart in Derbyshire folklore is what they call the Shivering Mountain Bogart, believed to inhabit the area around Mam Tor, which apparently is also known as the Shivering Mountain. According to legend, this Bogart delights in causing rock slides and landslips, making the treacherous paths even more dangerous for travellers. And another legend is the Bogart Hole Clough, a wooded area where a particularly troublesome Bogart was said to dwell. Stories tell of people being led astray, strange noises and even physical attacks by the unseen entity. Local traditions often include rituals or offerings to appease the Bogart and prevent its mischief. Yeah, sometimes I think these Bogart stories reflect the deep connection between people of Derbyshire and the Peak District and their natural environment. And then you've got the hobs. They're generally good-natured. They usually carry out chores for people in return for some porridge and cream or ale. But weirdly, it's said to never give them new clothes. It is guaranteed to piss them off and they'll smash up your house. But most famously, we've got Hobhurst House, which is a unique Bronze Age burial mound on Beagley Moor near Bakewell. And it's unique because instead of being round, It's rectangular, and the creature called Hobhurst is believed to live here and goes out at night to tend the sheep. Also, Monsaldale is associated with a hob. It really is an eerie place. And the hobbit emerges from a cave at night and threshes the corn for local farmers in return for a bowl of cream. The name of the cave could be derived from Thrist, an old word for giant. A quick mention to Jenny Greenteeth, who is a malevolent hag or mermaid from folklore associated with bodies of water such as rivers, streams and lakes. And there are 4 pools possibly associated with this cryptid in the peaks. And these are Blakemere Pool, Doxy Pool, which are both close to each other, Mermaid's Pool situated just below Kinder Scout, and a small pool near Robin Hood Stride. Jenny Greenteeth and these pools I've already covered pretty recently really after visiting the mysterious pools, and I thought they deserved a video of their own, so I'll add a link. There are many stories of phantom black dogs appearing in the Peak District. Almost every county in Britain has its own variant, from the Black Shuck of East Anglia to the Padfoot and Bog Beast of Yorkshire and the Church Grim of Scotland. These phantom black dogs seem to appear on ancient lanes and trackways, crossroads, old churchyards and prehistoric sites. Possibly it's the ability of these black dogs to pass between worlds, and it might explain their manifesting at peripheral sites like crossroads and ancient tumuli. They are often described as being the size of a calf, with saucer-sized eyes and a shaggy coat, but they're not always black. Now, many folk tales often describe ancient barrows as entrances to other realms, and crossroads have also long been seen as spots at which one reality might intersect with another. And the cryptic nature of these black dogs is also expressed in its shape-shifting abilities, and sightings of these beasts are often seen as portents of death. But some sightings are more benevolent, and stories exist of people being helped by these beasts. Now, one sighting in the Peak District was on the path up to Solomon's Temple above Paul's Cavern near Buxton. And another possibly regular sighting is of a ghostly black dog with huge staring eyes and backward pointing feet wandering around Holmesfield. And another report of the same area was in Victorian times, when a dog was seen by a woman at 3 Lane Ends in Holmesfield, and a sister who was accompanying her was unable to see the animal, and she sadly died 1 month later. There are tales told of a spectral black dog that often roams the countryside, known as the Black Dog of Abney, and this ghostly creature is said to be an omen of death. According to legend, those who encounter the black dog will soon face a tragic event or death in the family. Reported in Edale in 1925, something black in colour and of an enormous size, and it was slaughtering sheep at night and leaving the carcasses strewn about with legs, shoulders and heads torn off. Now, many hunting parties had gone out but had not been able to track the animal, and people refused to leave their homes after dark and kept their children safe in the house. But the creature seemed to mysteriously disappear, never heard of again. Now, was this a werewolf? It was rumoured. Now, another weird legend I dug up was the Goatman of Buxton. People had stumbled upon the scene of 3 ritualised sheep killings in the same area, and one of the carcasses had been torn open and filled with manure. Then 3 lambs were discovered hung and left to die on a barbed wire fence, And finally, a man witnessed his neighbour cutting down another animal from a tree in his back garden. And shortly after that incident, a group of friends was shocked to see an unearthly creature running up an old track near Lightwood Reservoir. They all said it looked like a goat, but it moved abnormally quickly on two legs silhouetted against the dusky sky. They returned the next day to investigate and found hoof marks in the mud, which eventually disappeared into the tall grass. Now, this creature fits into the archetypal image of the devil or the god Pan. A few local places have an established association with Satan, like Peak Cavern and Castleton is also named the Devil's Arse. The Peak District is full of dramatic landscapes and hidden caves and caverns, and one of the most intriguingly named is the Devil's Arse, also known as Peak Cavern. The name comes from the unusual flatulent sounds that the cave emits when air and water flow, and local folklore says the cave was once the lair of the devil himself. It was said he could emerge from the cavern to wreak havoc on the surrounding countryside, which gives rise to the legend of the Goatman, possibly. Also, we have Eldon Hole near the Peak Forest, and it's the deepest pothole in the Peak District. It was once believed to descend down to hell, and both these places were thought to be linked underground, as in the pools in the mermaid tales. Now this next one is bloody weird. It's called the Boneless, and it's a slug-like cryptid reportedly sighted late one night during the 1950s. And it was reported by a railway worker who was riding his motorbike back home after a long shift in Derbyshire's Londole Valley. And the report says the atmosphere was thick with the sound of the night, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze and the faint echo of distant owls. And he felt a sense of tranquility accompanying on his journey. But this calm was abruptly shattered. Ahead of him on the dimly lit road, he spotted a peculiar creature crossing the path. It was unlike any animal he had ever encountered, and this entity was famously referred to as a boneless in local folklore. And it moved with a slow, undulating motion that resembled a giant slug, sort of flowing and rippling as it made its way across the road, as if it was defying the conventional laws of biology, appearing to possess neither bones nor skin, but rather a gelatinous consistency that shimmered in the glow of the motorcycle headlights. And it's said to have shared his experience with his friends and locals, and the story of the boneless quickly spread through the valley, fueling discussions among the residents and prompting some to undertake their own investigations. And people came up with theories ranging from it being a misidentified animal to a creature from local folklore brought to life. Stories of animals entombed in stone seem to have a long tradition, and supposed discoveries are reported from around the globe. And various ideas have been discussed to explain the toad in the hole phenomenon, the work of the devil, spontaneous generation, animals entrapped during the biblical flood, or a juvenile animal grown too large to escape. Now, in 1826, an experiment was attempted with 24 toads sealed in niches carved into a block of limestone and a block of sandstone, and they were buried for 1 year. When the two blocks were recovered and examined, all the toads in the sandstone block were dead and decayed, but the ones in the porous limestone, some were still alive. The second experiment failed completely though. Think what you will. Now, I mention this because there was a report of a man in Derbyshire who unearthed a large boulder with his plough. And when he broke it with his pick, he discovered a hollow in the centre inside which was concealed a live frog. And it was said that when it hopped out of this, it promptly crumbled to dust. And it's said that the incident puzzles the man for the rest of his life, given there was no crack in the rock through which the amphibian could have received air, leaving him to wonder if it had been living inside the rock since it had formed. If it had lived that long inside the rock, why would it crumble when he opened it? Curious one. Lady Bar Reservoir, 1991. Standing almost 2.5 metres tall and covered in long brown hair, a family watched this creature from the roadside when a passing car scared the man-like figure off and it vanished into the nearby woodland. And more recently, a group of friends reported a hairy figure in the trees accompanied by small green lights. And in 2007 and 2009, footage was released that claimed to show a Bigfoot in the Peak District, although I won't be able to find that, any of them. In each case, there was said to be much larger than a human, but sadly, as with most such clips, both were somewhat shaky and far from conclusive. So, are there hairy men in the Peak District or not? The Londole Valley, which straddles the border between Derbyshire and Greater Manchester, and it's known for the mysterious phenomenon known as the Londole Lights. Now, these unexplained lights have been reported for centuries, and the lights are often described as glowing orbs or streaks of light that move erratically across the valley, sometimes hovering or pulsating before disappearing. It's a phenomenon I'd like to see, and there are many theories about the origin of the Londole Lights, ranging from natural explanations such as marsh gas or atmospheric conditions, or supernatural interpretations involving spirits, otherworldly beings, or UFOs. Now, of course, there are many sightings of the alien big cats, which I've recently done a video on. Now, the many excavations tell us that the Peak District was once a domain of bears, wolves and lions. But is it stretching the imagination too much to believe that these critters still walk the hills? It does make you wonder if there's part of the human psyche that still clings to our ancient past. Or is it something in our DNA that echoes back to a time when being savaged by a wild, hungry beast was a realistic threat? Like when you see a dark shape moving in your peripheral vision when you're in the dark woods or out on the misty moors. Is there something there, or is it part of our primitive brain in survival mode?